The alarm screamed through my helmet before I even saw the pod. I was hanging outside the wreck of an old war station, cutting scrap metal for pay, when the proximity sensor on my wrist lit up red and would not stop shaking. A small pod had slammed into the hull just 30 feet from where I floated. It was burning on the outside and leaking air on the inside, and the second I saw the shape moving behind the cracked window, my whole body went cold. Someone was alive in there. I did not think about rules. I did not think about the fact that this station sat in space that both humans and Veil ships passed through, and that the Veil had bombed 3 of our colonies during the war. I grabbed my cutting torch and went straight for the pod, because a voice in my head kept saying the same thing over and over. If you wait, whoever is in there dies. The metal fought me the whole way. My torch sputtered twice from low fuel, and for one long second, I thought I would run out before I broke through. Then the seal cracked. Air rushed out in a burst of frost, and I pulled the hatch open with my bare hands, even though the edges tore straight through my glove. Inside was a child, not human. Her skin had a faint blue shine under the emergency lights, and a ridge of bone ran down the back of her head like a small fin. 4 eyes, all of them shut. She was not moving, and for a moment I thought I was too late. Then her chest rose, barely. But it rose. I did not have time to feel relief. My oxygen reader was already blinking a warning, telling me the pod's air was almost gone, and mine was not much better. I pulled her free, wrapped my arms around her small body, and kicked off the broken hull as hard as I could, aiming for the open airlock of my own ship. The trip back should have taken 90 seconds. It felt like an hour. Every few seconds her body twitched against mine, and I kept talking to her the whole way, even though I knew she could not hear me through my helmet. Stay with me. Just a little longer. Stay with me. The airlock cycled too slowly. I hit the emergency override the second the outer door sealed, skipping half the safety checks, and dragged her straight into my small medical bay before the pressure had even fully evened out. That was when the real fight started. I had never treated a Veil before. All I knew about their bodies came from old combat manuals from the war, cold pages meant for soldiers, not doctors. I did not know her heart rate, her blood pressure, or what dose of anything her small body could handle. I only had guesses, and guesses are dangerous when a life is hanging on them. Her skin was turning a shade of gray that did not look right. I grabbed the oxygen mask meant for human children, adjusted the flow as low as I dared, and pressed it over her face. Her chest rose a little higher. I cleaned the burns along her arm, wrapped them, and injected a small dose of general stabilizer, praying it would not do more harm than good. For 6 hours I did not sleep. I sat beside her, checking her breathing every few minutes, terrified that the next check would be the one where she stopped. Then, just after the 6th hour, all 4 of her eyes opened at once. I froze. She stared at me, confused, scared, and then her small hand shot out and grabbed the sleeve of my jacket, like she was afraid I would vanish if she let go. "You are not supposed to help me," she said, her words broken and slow, like she was pulling them from a language she barely knew. "Well," I said, keeping my voice as calm as I could, "nobody sent me that memo." Her name was Ithral. It took another day of careful questions, and one very tense call through a neutral communication relay, before I learned who she really was. She was not just any Veil child. She was the missing daughter of the Veil Queen, a girl who had vanished 6 years ago, when her convoy was ambushed and destroyed. Everyone believed she had died with the rest of her guards. No survivors were ever found. Until now. The moment the relay operator confirmed her identity, my hands started shaking. I understood, in that instant, that I was not just holding an injured child anymore. I was holding the single most important person in an entire empire, an empire strong enough to erase my whole station without even trying hard. I thought about handing her over through the relay, and stepping far away from the situation. But every time I looked at her, curled up on my cot, still gripping my jacket even in her sleep, I could not make myself do it. She had already lost everything once. I was not going to be another stranger who disappeared on her. 3 days later, the Queen arrived. I felt the ship before I saw it. The whole station trembled as something massive moved into position outside, blotting out the stars from every window. When the Queen finally stepped onto my ship, she filled the room without needing to say a word. Tall, armored, 4 eyes sharp with a kind of intensity I had never seen in anyone, human or otherwise. I expected anger. I expected threats. Instead, I saw fear, the kind only a parent carries, the fear of almost losing a child forever. "Ithral," the Queen said, and her voice cracked slightly on the name. The girl ran to her, and for a moment, I thought that would be the end of it. A joyful reunion, a quiet thank you, and then I would go back to my ordinary life, scraping metal off dead ships for barely enough credits to survive. But Ithral did not let go of the Queen for long. Within seconds, she turned back toward me and grabbed my hand, pulling me forward until I stood beside both of them. "He stayed," Ithral said, looking up at her mother. "Everyone else ran. He stayed." The Queen's eyes moved to me slowly, studying every part of my face like she was trying to understand something that did not fit her expectations. I stood there, not knowing whether I was about to be thanked or arrested. "You held her," the Queen finally said. It was not a question. I did what anyone would do, I said, though somewhere inside I knew that was not entirely true. Not everyone would have. The Queen's expression shifted, and for the first time since she entered the room, some of the tension left her shoulders. She turned to one of her guards and spoke quickly in her own language. The guard's eyes widened before he gave a quick nod and stepped back. I did not understand the words, but I understood the reaction. "Do you know what life debt means among my people?" the Queen asked me. I shook my head. When a child of royal blood is saved from death and names their protector before witnesses, it becomes a bond recognized by our oldest laws. It is not a gift. It is not a favor to be repaid and forgotten. It ties 2 lives together until the child comes of age. My stomach tightened. "Are you saying I cannot leave?" "I am saying my daughter has already decided," the Queen said. "And in matters like this, her decision cannot be undone, not even by me." I looked down at Ithral, who was still holding tightly to my hand, watching me with all 4 eyes wide open, waiting to see what I would say. She looked so small, standing between 2 powers far bigger than herself. A girl who had already survived something no child should survive, now bracing herself for the possibility that the one person who stayed might choose to leave anyway. I thought about my old life. The endless shifts cutting metal off broken ships, the unpaid wages, the quiet, empty room I returned to every night with nobody waiting for me. None of it pulled at me the way her grip on my hand did right then. "I am not going anywhere," I said. Ithral's whole body relaxed, like she had been holding her breath the entire time. The Queen studied me a moment longer, and something behind her sharp eyes softened. "You will not be a prisoner in my house," she said. "You will not be paraded as a trophy or hidden away as a secret. You stay because she needs you, and because, it seems, you were willing to risk everything for a child who was not your own." "I did not think," I said honestly. "I just acted." "Sometimes," the Queen said, "those are the only actions that matter." Over the following days, I learned more about the world I had stepped into than I ever expected to learn in a lifetime. The Veil were not the monsters the old war stories made them out to be. They were careful, disciplined, and fiercely loyal to those they trusted. Ithral taught me small words in her language, laughing every time I said them wrong, her 4 eyes lighting up with a kind of joy that made the danger of everything around us feel worth it. The Queen kept her word. I was given quarters of my own, not a locked cell, not a guarded room, but a real place to live. Guards who once eyed me with suspicion slowly began nodding when I passed, as if they understood, in their own quiet way, what I had done. Some nights, I still thought about the wreck where I found her, the sound of the alarm screaming through my helmet, the seconds where I thought I might be too late. It never fully left me, but every time that memory returned, I would look over and see her safe, alive, and stubbornly holding onto my sleeve during meetings she was too young to sit through, and the fear would fade into something steadier. I never planned to become anyone's protector. I never imagined a routine shift cutting scrap metal would end with me standing beside a queen, bound by a law older than my own species' history. But some choices are not really choices at all. They are instincts, the kind that grab you before your mind has time to argue. I stayed, because she asked me to stay. I stayed because leaving her side, even once, felt like the one mistake I could never allow myself to make. And somewhere in that strange, impossible turn of events, cutting through a burning pod in the middle of nowhere, I had gone from a tired salvager with nothing waiting for him to the one person a lost girl refused to let go of, ever again.